Indeed, some people entered and played. I used to wonder why folks wore large Tengan cowboy hats when they played, and the reason for that is that I move around. Imagine this, the audience is yelling. The stage is illuminated by flashbulbs, and there he is, Bob Dylan, immortalized like a myth, a prophet wearing sunglasses and a god playing a guitar. He is untouchable in the eyes of the world, a poet warrior who redefined revolt and changed music. However, the story takes a darker turn when you step beneath the stage lights. Behind the well-written lyrics and recognizable record covers is a convoluted web of betrayals, shattered friendships, and broken pledges that are murmured in backstage nooks. This Dylan is not the Dylan found on Rolling Stone covers and in record stores. This Dylan broke people's hearts without turning around, who employed quiet as a weapon. When loyalty pleaded with him to stay, he vanished. The truth is that it's explosive in addition to being messy, and it begins long before the cheers died down. A woman who once referred to him as the love of her life is where it all started. Baze, Joan. She gave him her heart, her voice, and her stage, and he vanished when she most needed him. The ensuing quiet was not only private, it had a political bent. Many believe Dylan had abandoned more than just a romantic partner. There was a cause he had abandoned. However, that was only the first fracture. His romantic life developed like a dark maze as the years went by. Whispered tales of affairs spanning cities, tour buses, and hotel rooms were revealed behind the scenes. Women evolved from muses to memories. Sarah, one of them, attempted to restore peace after the storm, but even that haven ultimately fell apart. A new and unexpected storm emerged just when Dylan thought he may finally find peace in the midst of the commotion. From the other side of the Atlantic, this time, former countercultural armaments comrade John Lennon turned into a silent foe. Once, they had had the same fire, the same urgency, and the same pulse. However, adoration turned into animosity as their visions started to differ. Lennon's caustic wit met Dylan's cryptic contempt. The audience witnessed astute jabs during interviews. Insiders saw a Cold War going on underneath the surface. Two titans of revolt who now regarded one another with heightened distrust rather than respect. The strain, however, did not stop there. Dylan even started to feel abandoned by the very movements he helped spark, such as counterculture, anti-war, and civil rights. He had been chosen as their prophet, their emblem, and their unflinching voice. Dylan, however, flinched. Like a snake shedding its skin, he stepped down from the position, leaving behind deceived fans and shocked campaigners who gazed into the void he had created. Yes, but as you may recall, the earliest videos were the films they produced. Little Richard is unable to stop it, you know. Or, to put it another way, Dylan's favorite was suffocating. He didn't simply refuse to be called such, he threw the labels away completely. In reality, what seemed like aloofness was a planned getaway. Dylan, like his fictional idol Rambo, opted to disappear rather than fit in. He set bridges on fire for survival, not retaliation. He broke off friendships without giving a reason. Like faded garments, he gave up on versions of himself. A stranger one day, a prophet the next, and barely out of grasp at all times. This dude wasn't running away. Before anyone could read the last act, the man burned the screenplay in defiance of his own story. There were deeper splits even among allies. Once a haven of sound, the band started to distance themselves from the man they were supporting. What started off as friendship became subdued animosity. And when they finally took the stage together for the last waltz, smiles struck silent cracks that would never completely heal. He assisted them in re-establishing their sound. However, he seized center stage and left them in the background when the spotlight returned. Rumors circulated about his dominance, his aloofness, and his refusal to take responsibility. The music persisted, neither did the friendships. And once more, Dylan left without incident, leaving others to bear the silence. And in his poems, that quiet reverberates even more. Every breath he takes in between verses demonstrates that. He dares not speak out loud about the echoes of anguish, the malice, and the guilt. Dylan's songs are more than just musical interpretations of poetry. They are minefields of sound. Unresolved anger and hidden regret were present in every line. These aren't songs about endings. They never mailed their letters. There were never any confrontations or apologies. You can hear the roar of a relationship that has been reduced to ashes, with no intention of sorting through the pieces when you listen to Idiot Wind. In addition to rage, There's no hidden meaning in positively 4th Street, only blatant disdain cloaked in song. Don't hesitate, it's okay. That isn't a sign of acceptance. It's heartache masquerading as apathy. The silences in between the sentences are what hurt. The way the chords flex like unfulfilled vows. When he was singing about them, friends knew it. In the smoke, lovers identified themselves. Their defeat was etched on vinyl for the enemies to hear. These songs are more than just tunes. They are battlefields of emotions. With no priest, no forgiveness, and no end in sight, Dylan transformed his greatest weapon, his lyrics, into a confessional booth, haunted by the people he left behind. Then the unexpected turn arrived. Dylan shed his past once more, this time in flames. After being reborn in the gospel and faith, he completely transformed himself, not just his songs. The voice of the disillusioned teenager and the cryptic poet had vanished. A wild-eyed, uncompromising preacher took his place, proclaiming salvation from the stage like a man under a spell. He wouldn't perform his old hits, the songs that had made him famous and motivated a whole generation. Rather, he used music to preach the gospel, which alienated long-standing comrades and left them in startled silence. A few left, others remained loyal, perplexed, or simply hoped he would return to himself. Supporters were unsure on how to interpret it. Those who had admired his secular genius now listened to him criticize everything they valued. He was ridiculed by critics. Former allies abandoned the cause, and he doubled down. Dylan. He believed he had been reborn and had been spared from the abyss. However, it felt like abandonment to many. The prophet who once screamed against injustice and war and marched for civil rights now appeared to be associated with a different cause. Certainly a divine one, but not theirs. Others perceived it as a betrayal of the counterculture, while others saw it as a spiritual awakening. The man who used to sing protest songs to them had discovered a new god, leaving his following bewildered, split, and eventually left behind. However, even fresh voices evoked old tension. Once heralded as his heir, Patti Smith felt the cold when she stepped into his circle. Critics referred to her as the female Dylan in the late 1970s. The torch had been passed, fans muttered. However, Bob Dylan was not amenable to being replaced, even in a symbolic sense. In interviews, he gave superficial praise, but those close to him perceived something more profound, an underlying animosity, the type that erodes rather than erupts. The environment during their joint tour was everything but cooperative. The backstage dynamic was later characterized by Smith as icy, uncomfortable, and even strange. Dylan would not look at me. He would provide vague half-sentences or just become silent as if the atmosphere between them were too dense to communicate. The very places they were supposed to share made her feel uncomfortable. Insiders remembered little acts of sabotage, last-minute set changes, technological glitches that never appeared to happen in his own performances, and a general tone of patronizing behavior that was passed off as mentoring. It turned into a silent psychological conflict instead of a celebration of 2 generations of creative fire. It was like trying to light a match in a storm to be close to him. Smith once remarked, "He was the silence that followed, and he was the wind, and it wasn't a quiet stillness. It was dense, intense, and replete with unspoken realities, such as lyrics that were never included in the song." And the unraveling was finished when Dylan turned on his admirers at last. By the 1918s, Dylan's creative, spiritual, and emotional trajectories were all in a downward spiral. On stage, the legendary figure who once held a whole country in his palm now appeared to be a ghost. He would show up to concerts looking unkempt, his eyes averted, and his voice unsteady. He provided cryptic rebukes in lieu of poetic clarity. He performed fragmented set lists, frequently changed to the point of unrecognizability. In place of revered songs, he chastised his viewers. He made fun of the songs that had given him his prophetic status. Blowing in the Wind and other classics were either whispered, distorted, or completely avoided. People were left in tears, bewildered, or incensed after waiting decades to meet him. Some people jeered. Disturbed by the gap between myth and reality, several protested by leaving. Dylan, however, didn't flinch, or at least didn't show it. The audience wasn't always sacrosanct to him. At times, the jailer would remind him of the person he used to be, the one he no longer wanted to be. Dylan's outbursts during such times were motivated by a deep, agonizing longing to be free from their expectations rather than by hatred. He then came undone in public, challenging his followers to love him for the person he was becoming rather than for who he had been. Dylan was fundamentally not intended to be held. He was fog and flames, a shapeshifter who disappeared as soon as someone attempted to get a good look at him. Like smoke, he moved through fingers, setting everything on fire in his wake, but he never lingered long enough to enjoy the warmth. The price? It was huge, and it reverberated where no spotlight could. Every masterpiece had a foundation of broken trust behind it. Every thunderous applause was accompanied by someone in the stands who was grieving over a betrayal, a heartbreak, or a silence that was more powerful than any poem. Not only did Dylan transform music, as he proceeded, he scorched the road, leaving behind scorched earth and people who were still perplexed as to how someone so intelligent could be so frigid. He rarely spoke the words that could have cured a few, but he wrote truths that touched millions. Although his songs were emotional temples, he frequently closed the doors and tossed away the key in real life. We are thus left with both his legacy and the protracted, unanswered question it raises. Can someone break the hearts of everyone closest to them while changing the world? Bob Dylan did not simply leave. He vanished into myth, and there was no serenity in the ensuing hush. It was a reflection of everyone he left behind, who pondered whether they were the price of his brilliance or merely a part of his story.